Hello, Blazor fans. Welcome to another Blazor Power Hour. I've got with me this week and for the next couple weeks, Justin Rice, Lance McCarthy. Welcome, guys.
Hey Ed, thanks for having us back.
Hey everybody, happy to be here.
So, if you missed last week's show, we started a new series on the show to create a solar power monitoring app. Lance filled us in on all the details of what it's like to install solar panels on your home, get the complete setup with batteries, the whole 9 yards on the last show. So if you want to catch up on any of that, check out our last show. This week we're going to start coding some stuff. So we're going to need to spin up some new projects. We're going to be reading some data off of Lance's, what is the part called again? The
The
piece of hardware that transmits the data?
yeah, so it's an MQTT broker, which is living
Broker.
on the inverter.
So there's a piece of hardware on premises that is monitoring all of the solar activity and then dispatching that data out. And we need to read data off of that and do some displays and whatnot.
Lance, that broker is just built into the inverter.
No,
There
that's
we go.
actually a great question. The inverter has the ability to talk to other things, but it's not in MQTT format. So I bought this other little piece of software that I can run on a Raspberry Pi that connects to the inverter. And what it does, that is the thing that has the MQTT host on it. Kind of like it's like an interface that can understand the USB data. It's essentially the same data and same properties, but then surfaces it as a pub sub MQTT broker. So
Cool.
yeah.
So we have a lot of choices for
Mhm.
applications these days. And we had talked about this off air, but the MQTT server uses a TCP protocol. Is that right?
Yeah, it uses a TCP IP socket, like the library that will connect to that broker. It's not your typical like web or
Yeah, this is
SignalR
traditional
socket.
sockets. This isn't
Yeah.
the web browser or WebSocket API. This is like traditional sockets. So we're going to need a server, Blazor server application, or ASP.NET server application is more technically correct. Blazor is just a component of ASP.NET Core. So we need the ASP.NET Core server portion because we need something that lives on a real device that's not just a browser. Like we're not executing code in the browser, we're executing code server side. So we're going to need that to be able to read the sockets and make that connection. So we need to do, I think, Blazor and .NET 8. So we'll start a Blazor web app. Let's see, what do we want to name this thing? Blazor.
Second hardest problem in programming right here.
Naming stuff repeatedly.
Blazor Solar Power Hour. How about that?
There we go.
Let's see. And do we want to make the GitHub repo public for now or private?
There's no secrets other than the IP address of it, in which we can.
Okay.
What I'll do is I will create a domain name, a temporary one that we can share live and use it live, and then I'll just take it offline long term. Yeah.
So we've got some more options here. We're going to choose .NET 8. That's going to be the long-term support. We're not going to use any authentication for this right now. It's just extra hoops to jump through. We don't plan on scaling this out to more than just a demo project. The interactive render mode, we have a couple options here. I think we're mainly going to be using server-side Blazor for this. Again, we're just doing a demo. We don't have a bunch of clients connecting, and then we have the socket consideration. Like we've got this traditional socket to use, not WebSockets. So WebAssembly is not going to work. We could like take the data in and then republish it as a WebSocket service, but that's going to be a whole thing. So we'll start with the server. And then the entire app's going to be using this interactivity model. So the per page and component interactivity mode doesn't really apply here. We'll just go ahead and choose global, and this will give us the kind of one project fits all solution that we need.
This pretty
We can
much
go ahead.
makes the
So
Blazor web app template just build the old school Blazor server project that you used to get in
exactly.
6 and 7.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, exactly like you said. It's the old school Blazor app that you've been used to for as long as Blazor's been around. So that one came out in like 3.0. So it's been out for quite a while now. So if you ever want to go back to that, make sure you just grab global as your option, and then either WebAssembly or server gets you the older style um, setup of the template. And then we'll include this sample pages, and we're not quite ready for .NET Aspire yet. We'll add that after the fact, I think.
Yeah.
We'll be ready to go.
I've done a few .NET Aspire projects already since the preview one, and it makes sense in the context of what we're trying to do. But I think this is the rare situation where we don't architect it ahead of time for Aspire, and then we figure out how it works in Aspire later.
That sounds good. I'm not an Aspire expert. I know kind of the gist of it, and we don't really have all of the plugins and pieces yet. So it's not going to benefit us, right?
Yeah.
Until we get down the road further. So this is our Hello World project. So we've got the usual layout, nav menu. I think most folks have seen Blazor by now, but we can take a quick kind of tour of what's in here. The new templates, they changed the folder level by adding this components folder, and everything is underneath of that. And I think that works pretty well. We've got the layouts, which are kind of generic layout components. It's just the kind of main layout of the app and some navigation. And then we have the sample pages in here, the counter, the home, and then your weather data sample, which has been kind of watered down a little bit from .NET 7. They kind of tried to make it easier, but took out the HTTP context from it. So if we spin this
Didn't
up,
that confuse more people though? Because they're like, what, when can I access the HTTP context and what does it mean?
it did, and there's a GitHub issue out on it for .NET 9 to see what they can do to kind of remedy that. So the data that comes into this view, depending on whether you're on Blazor server or Blazor WebAssembly, in the template, they changed how that data gets surfaced. And it used to come over an HTTP request if you're on WebAssembly, and they just made it like generate on the client, which isn't a scenario that anybody's really actually going to use in any real world development. So it confused a lot of people. So they're trying to look at ways to bring that back. And the reason they got rid of it is because there's so many ways to spin up a Blazor app now. Templating it out got to be difficult because you have, the different interactivity modes, and there's a million different demos that you can do with this weather view. And they wanted to try to make it as streamlined as possible, but in doing that, they threw the baby with the bathwater. So
Wasn't that the
anyway,
problem though with most of the templates is if you have to put something in there, it's very opinionated, right? So
yeah,
you have this file new project and you have an opinionated way of doing something, and then all of a sudden everyone's app is doing that one thing. Um, and the developer who has an alternate way of doing it has no guidance. So it's almost like a damn if you do, if you don't, and you can't
exactly.
do a template for every single thing. So yeah,
Yeah.
maybe a service and then input whatever you do from here inside of the service.
Yeah, and it just kind of goes with the growth of any framework too. The more features they add, the more complex it gets. The buy-in on Blazor's always been that it's easy to learn, and now there's a bunch of more stuff to learn. So it's getting a little bit harder. The basics, if you already know it, are pretty much the same, but for new folks coming on, the onboarding's gotten a little more difficult. So it's a hard balancing act.
In this
All
case,
right.
though, it works for us because what we're concerned about in today's episode is connecting to that MQTT host, right? To that
Mm-hmm.
broker. So by the end of this hour, we should have at least added the dependencies for how the libraries for MQTT.net and have some sort of service that can subscribe to that topic that we want to connect to. So at least
Yeah.
we have a starter blank page we can do that on.
So I've got Visual Studio up here. Hopefully people can see well. I can zoom in on things if anybody in chat has kind of a question about anything specific that's hard to see in the UI here. And then the code should look pretty good once we start coding. As far as dependencies go, what do we need to get started here, Lance? We got our hello world.
So the first one we should be concerned about is MQTT.net. I always forget the exact spelling of this package. Just try MQTT.
TTNet.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
while you're on
always
our
I
server.
always have
Yeah.
this problem. Package sources defaulted to Telerik. All right, MQTT net. There's that one.
That's the one. Yeah.
That's the one there. So this one has. Let's see. I always like looking at some of the statistics on these before I download. This one has 12 million downloads. It's a pretty popular package.
And that other one there, MQTT.net ASP.NET Core. I'm not exactly sure what extra components it has that would help us in this,
Hmm.
but I do know that out of the box, my proof of concept worked with the first selection. So maybe as we go,
Interesting.
we'll find some limitation that this solves, like the real-time connection, or maybe this is just meant to be a broker and we don't need the broker.
Just taking a quick look at the dependencies for it, just to see like what might be different here as well. So it's .NET Standard. Works off .NET Core app. Let's see what this one's got going on. Oh, this is full framework. .NET Framework version
But our project
4.5.
is .NET 8, right? So what is it?
Yeah,
Okay,
we
so
might want
since
to
we have,
give the other one a try sometime and see, because it'll probably be faster, if
I
anything.
think that first one is, but this project targets .NET 8, right? So if we go over the dependencies and we see what it has for .NET 7 and up,
It says .NET 7,
no dependencies.
no dependencies.
So we can kind of think of this as a .NET standard library at this point,
Yeah.
probably.
So it, like I said, it may be faster if there's no. They have the same version and everything. One's probably just compiled for .NET 8.
Know what else maybe is that that first one, we don't need the broker. Like if we're not hosting a broker ourselves, right? We're not going to be doing the middleman work of publishing. These are topics that you can subscribe to, and we don't
Mhm.
need that extra work. So just a base one.
Just kind of curious
Client
if there's
broker.
anything in the docs about it. So it looks like it goes to the same project.
Yeah.
All right, we can tinker with that another time. But for right now, we'll go ahead and use what we know is stable. So we'll grab that one. That one's installed.
Okay.
And oops, I didn't mean to
What do we do
close that. What
next?
else are we going to need to build this out?
So we will need SQLite, but I think we should save that for later. Like
Okay.
all we care about right now is that we can get these messages and just show them in a list or in a chart
Okay.
or something. You know, yeah,
Probably just hijack the home page for now to do that.
yeah. And basically the way that's
Alright.
done is you create an MQTT factory which comes from MQTT.net, but
So we'll probably need
um,
to register some services and things, right?
I think it does it internally, but let me double check. In the proof of concept, we need. Yeah, so the only service we need to register is our own. So there's
Okay.
no out of the box broker service that we need to add. So instead, we create our own service class that will do the work for us. Um, and the way I did it was I just created, we could easily throw it in the code behind for this Razor page, but
Oh,
you
okay.
might as well start off right by adding a new class for this service. So if we create a new class, call it MQTT UI servers or something.
I'm going to drop it in a subfolder for now. Class, and then, okay, Visual Studio is going to be slow today. Jeez. All right. MQTT UI
Yeah.
service. That's a lot of capitals. Naming things is hard.
So the reason why we're doing this is because we want multiple visitors to the site to be able to do this well and have some sort of scoped service for each user.
Okay.
Um, and the two things we need to connect to a broker is the IP address or URL. So that would be a string.
All right.
So
So is this going to be like a property or a field?
this is a choice that we can do now. We can put it in as a constructor, right? A constructor overload that we know we require at least the IP address or URL. So that could be a required parameter for the class to even be instantiated.
Okay. So are there multiple settings or just the one?
There's two. There's the URL and the port. So two
Okay.
strings. Even though a port is an
Um,
int, I think we should get the parameter as a string so that's easier to store and we can parse it later.
So what we could do is bring in configuration, because this is a Blazor server app. So we can just say I configuration, and then we can just pull those out of configuration.
Yep. And this is where I use MQTT underscore host and MQTT underscore port. Those would be the two configuration variables that we can get.
All right. So let's see. Let's just drop these into a constructor real quick to make it easy. Let's see, what is it warning me here? Save this. It wants this. I can move this down. I was going to use the fancy new stuff. We'll just stick it there. And then we've got, they're both strings, right?
Yep.
Um,
So yeah, it should
usually,
be a backing field, right? So yeah, you pull it in off the
yeah,
configuration.
trying to think like, we can always refactor it out later. I was going to,
Yeah.
whoops, do this more simply, but let's see. So we've got a couple things here. Private, MQ, oops, string, MQTT,
Host
host, and then
port.
port,
Yep.
port. And then we'll go ahead and set those up. And then we'll do, I'm going to shorten this. I'm going to type that every time. config, and then grab that. Just trying to get in a good habit of throwing an exception if nothing is set. So we'll throw an exception if there's not one set. It's basically what I'm doing there.
Yep. Only the port is required. I mean, only the host is required. The port is not. Instead, we can
okay.
default to 1883. So if this is null, instead of an exception, we use 1883.
Forgot the new keyword there. MQTT port. And instead of throwing an exception on this one, whoa. On a live stream, I always forget how to use a keyboard. Don't mind that. 1883, is that what you said?
Yep.
And the
reason why it's 1883 is that's the default port. So it makes it easier for an implementer. It's like, I don't have to type in 1883 every single time. It's already using the default value. So it makes it easier for them, but it also makes it easier for folks who have a custom port. Like, for example, 443, if you have an HTTPS URL and everything's going over that, then you use port 443. So we solve everyone's needs by doing that. Okay, so we have what we need now. The next thing would be to expose to the consumer of this a way to listen to a subscription. So we would want a public. So what I did for this before was I allowed it's a task, but in the parameters of the task, I let someone pass in a listener. And in my case, I did it as a function. So yeah, let's say public setup MQTT, public task setup MQTT. And now imagine that you are implementing the service in one of your views. We need to be able to tell this thing what topics we want to listen to and what happens when that topic gets hit. So we need some way to trigger a task. So what you can do is the first parameter would be a task of string, for example. I think it's function task comma string. Here, I have to pull my proof of concept.
This is an actual function. So it's a func
Yeah.
of task of string.
Yeah, we can use string to simplify it. And then this would be the listener. You can call it delegate, message delegate or something. And we need that should be good for now. We can update this after. We'll refactor this after once we actually have args that we want to pass to it. But the concept here is now we're setting up MQTT. I would make that an async task because we're going to await a few things. And for folks watching, if you weren't awaiting anything, you could return task complete. But in this case, we need to await some results. So
I think in VS Preview, when you type await here, it will automatically come up here and drop the async in now.
Hey,
that's pretty neat. I've noticed that.
So now is the MQTT service from MQTT.net, and it's called the factory. So we want to do, we can call it, it's a variable factory equals new MQTT factory.
So.
We're not using await right now. We use it after we set up some settings. Okay. Yep. So you can call var factory equals new MQTT factory.
So here, let's switch this around. We're going to create a new MQTT factory. And then does that take any parameters or it's just
Nope.
newed up?
And the next step is we're creating a client. So this one is an MQTT client equals new, no, equals factory create client. Create an MQTT client. Yep. And that's it for that.
All right.
And it shouldn't
doesn't
need
like
any
that.
args. Why doesn't it like that?
Because let's see, it
Factory
creates
is not,
an
no.
IMQTT client. It gives you an interface back.
Now we use the settings. So we need to tell this client, this is the client that actually is creating a TCP socket, right? It's creating the connection to the broker. And if you go, it's easier to, the settings are client options. So it is MQTT client options builder. It's a new object. So you can do var, var options equals new MQTT client options builder. Yeah. And here's where we do, you can close that and you do with TCP. Yep. And then inside there are two values that we need. We need the host and the port. The host goes first and the port goes second. Thing about the port though is we currently have it as a string, so we need to pass it as, we need to cast it or parse it as an int. Host was correct, so you do host
host
first.
was good. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do this.
Perfect. And then port is an int. So to be responsible, we would write this out a little more, but you can do int parse for now. Yeah. And that would be MQTT port. And then dot build. So it's that options builder pattern. It goes after with TCP server.
Okay.
Yep, that looks right.
What does that give us back?
Just option builder.
So I'm going to use the refactoring thing here and just let it
There you go.
redo that, and then we'll bring that.
Does it let us use the
okay, it's not the
extension
same type.
methods though? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll
Okay.
let you just do it that way, but we can.
Now we need to subscribe to this event. So under the client, so the next line is MQTT client dot application message received. I mean the client variable that you already have.
Oh, oops.
Yeah. This is where we want to pass on the delegate. It's an event handler, not a method. So it's plus equals.
Oh.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right.
But
So
instead of having this event handler in the same class, actually, you know what you should do is, yeah, type it out and resolve it in the same class, but we're going to update the signature of our method with what it needs.
okay,
So,
this doesn't like that.
Yeah. So, but what you do is instead of message delegate, do message delegate 1. And then resolve it, have IntelliSense auto complete it for you in the same class. This will be a throwaway.
Generate
Method.
method.
Yep, exactly.
So
Now
drop
we can
that
take
here.
this object that it wants So you take that MQTT application message received. You see that that arg there?
The
Yeah.
argument? Yeah.
Yep. Now we're gonna make a task of that. So we're on line 15, instead of a task of string, now we should be able to use message delegate 1, right? I mean message delegate. What
It
what
does
else
not
is
like
wrong?
that.
Function task
Is not
event
on
args.
here. Cannot convert from.
Oh, it needs task. All
It's
right. Here, let me save you some time. I'll paste it in our chat. That's the signature I used before. So it's a function of task.
Okay, so it wants a message delegate and returns a task. Those are two very different things.
Yeah.
So what we had before was a function that takes a task and returns the message delegate receive args, and we changed it from a function that takes the args and returns a task. So we had the inputs and outputs backwards.
And now we can get rid of line 25. And the whole reason we're
Alright.
doing this is because we want this class to be, this service to be usable, right?
Mhm.
We want to be able to, in any UI page we want to be able to subscribe and have that distinct separate listener without having a single hard-coded event handler in this one class. And then you have to parse out the results. Instead, you can just throw in whatever you want anywhere, and it's much more functional, and it has better reusability and composability by doing it this way.
Yeah, this is going to be like a pub sub type of a thing.
Yeah, exactly. So
So
at this
yeah.
point on line 22, we only have a couple more lines to finish it out, but functionally, in your mind, when this will connect to that broker, and it's a pub sub system, we're telling it what we want to subscribe to. And then once that message gets subscribed and there's a new message for it, it will trigger this event handler. It will trigger this task and say, here's the new message that you want. Here's the new message that you want.
Okay.
The next line is await MQTT client connect async. Oh, it's client for you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Yeah.
is that client?
And connect async. And this is where we pass in the options that we just made.
All right.
And if you wanted some sort of cancellation token, that connect async method has overloads that lets you pass in cancellation tokens in case you want to stop and do other more advanced things. But that right there, we now have a connection to the broker. The next part is, how do we tell it what topics we want to subscribe to? And this uses the same options builder. So what I did for this, since we know that the same topics for this solar system are the same, we don't really need a dynamic way to change the topics we want. We know this is the list of topics we're going to get all the time because this is a solar system setup. So I just created a single public task that says subscribe async, and then another one that says unsubscribe async. No args needed. Yeah, they're just two buttons, right, that you can trigger. So one starts it and one stops it.
Okay.
So
And
now
what
in
goes?
subscribe, yeah, now we need to basically tell this what are the topics that we want to listen to. And it uses the same options builder that similar to what we used, except it is, first thing, we now need to make the factory and the client backing fields. because we need access to those to do the subscription. So on line 17 and 18, we make them private. Um, it can't be static or read
Okay.
only, but
Oops, MQTT factory.
call it factory. I mean, it's the only time that we're going to use it. And it can't be read only because we're instantiating
Oh,
it in
yeah.
this setup
It's not
method.
happening in the constructor.
Yeah.
Right. That's always just getting new. There's nothing being passed into it. So I'm just
Yep.
going to take this nullable out. Go ahead and just set it there. Oops. All right. And then,
Now the client, I wouldn't do the same thing because this creates disposable resources. So I would make sure that is only instantiated when we need it, which we have to do anyways because it's based off the factory. It is just
see.
MQTT client, not channel options.
Oops, it auto completed that.
Yeah.
Options.
No, just client.
Why does it keep auto completing? Oh, I put an I in front of it. That's why. Or, oh, we need the client, right? Not the
Yeah.
options, the client. Okay. That's what I kept doing wrong.
Probably should do the same naming to MQTT client so that we know it's not any other kind of
Yeah.
client. Yeah.
So we just changed the scope there. And then this one.
Yeah. So that stays, but don't instantiate it there. That should be
No?
null until
Oh,
we
okay.
create it. Yeah.
All right. So throw nullable in there. And then we got to remove that line.
Let me just update those names and you should be good.
Yeah, I should have used my tools to do that. Been much faster.
And I could have told you this ahead of time, but I wanted us to discover that we needed backing fields until later because this is kind of the realistic dev flow
Yeah.
that you would go through, right? So, all right. So here now we create subscription options, and the name of that is done. The object comes from the factory, so it's an MQTT factory dot create subscribe options builder. So we do have var builder equals that. I mean, var options equals that. Now these are subscription options. So now we're going to tell what to subscribe to. This is the pub sub part of things. And the way we do that is through a filter. So it would be, oh, I'll wait till you're done setting that up.
Oh, you're good.
Okay. So it would be options, create filter. Oh no, with topic filter. Yep. And in here, it is a delegate. So it's kind of like link where you're doing T2. So T equals right angle. So we'll use T as you know how you do the lambda for link. So it'd be lowercase t,
Oh, okay. I got you.
lambda, yeah. T with topic. And in here, we put a string. So this is the topic we want to listen to.
Okay.
And this is solar underscore assistant.
So any capitals or does it
No,
casing
lowercase,
matter?
yep.
Underscore.
Assistant / pound sign. So this is just the format for this particular broker. If you had a different broker, it would tell you how to subscribe to those topics. They have their own particular thing.
Okay. In this case, is the pound like a wild card?
It is.
Okay.
Yep.
So
It's
anything
exactly
that
what it is.
begins with Solar Assistant, we're going to be grabbing from the
Exactly.
topics. Okay,
Because
cool.
we could you like let's say there's too much messages and you don't want to hear all these other things and you only care about a couple topics, then sure you could compound the with topic part and add more. But in our case, we just want everything for the solar data and then we filter it out later. Their little batches are about 12 messages, so it's kind of small. We can get away with the wild card here. Sometimes you can't.
Okay.
After the builder, we do dot build. So options with topic filter dot build. And now we have our options. So what do we do with them? We do await MQTT client, subscribe async, and then we pass in the options. This one looks like it wants you to pass the cancellation token. So for the second parameter of the option,
Now,
oh,
is
you like
this build a going to mutate options? It's going to write into options, or does build create something that we need to capture?
build, like once you click build, it should create the options. But
Okay, so
let's see what
it's going to
happens
take
when
options
we,
and modify it.
yeah, so do comma task none, cancellation token none. Yeah, 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 just yeah, exactly. And let's see if it still complains. So we might need to check for null.
Options is no, no
Description
here.
options.
Cannot convert from builder to options.
Oh,
So
you know what we might need to do is instead of options on the new line, move that with topic filter to the end of line 28. Because right now we're doing it as a new line of instructions, but instead all of that line 28 and 29 should be one line.
I'm
Do you
not
know what I mean? So
following.
right, cut right from with topic filter to build. Cut that out and put that at the end of line 28.
At line 28. Oh, okay. Yeah. So here.
Bingo. Yeah. And
Um,
now get rid of line 29.
build
And
came for the ride.
dot build. No.
And
And it might
then
be the wrong type.
this,
Try var. It might
yeah,
be, I think that's a
bar back there.
nullable. Yeah, that was it. Okay.
So got that. Build. And then question mark in there. Nope, can't do that. Let's see. MQTT client, maybe null
Okay.
here.
It
It
might be
shouldn't be
null there.
null.
Yeah. And because connect, I mean, can we build the client inside the constructor? Possibly, but we need the message delegate first. So we have a choice here. We can check for null first. That'll probably be the better option. So in between 30 and 31, you do a check for null to prevent that null reference.
Do we want to throw an error or do we want to just do something else?
Just use is not null. If MQTT client is not null, then we can run that. And it might be better like if you want to throw an exception saying you haven't set up, you have not called set up MQTT. So as an else, right? So if MQTT client is null on the second part of after
If we
36,
just do this,
then short
then
circuit it. Yeah.
yeah. Um, ah, oh my gosh.
Vampires.
I hate typing on live streams. We can clean the message up later. So there we go. That'll reassure that we are not null there. And then is that it for subscribing?
Yeah. And unsubscribe is exactly the opposite, except you do client unsubscribe async. But we do need a reference to the options. So you can either rebuild the options again inside unsubscribe async. So basically copy everything out of 29 to 34 and then paste it into unsubscribe async.
What if we just take this and do a create method and call this
Well, this isn't the client
this.
options, it is the subscription option.
Oh, there we go. Let's see.
Client options are when you use the host and the port, right? How the client connects, and subscription options are when you tell it a topic.
You can do that, and then we can copy that there and just drop it there. And then this is on subscribe async.
Bingo. It might be unsubscribe options. Yeah, I screwed us there. So instead of subscribe options, it is unsubscribe options. So now the extracted method isn't useful. No, I'm sorry. On line 43.
Oh, okay. They're different.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's see. So when we do this create subscribe options builder, it's going to be a different options
It's going to be
builder.
create unsubscribe option builder.
Okay, yeah, let's go back then. It's the way it was. All right, so we're similar yet different.
I was just thinking, it's like, why
uh,
didn't I have this as a backing field? Because the options are the same, and then this is why.
And then let's see. Let me change this to unsubscribe.
Oh, and the options
And
are a little
then
different. So instead of a lambda, instead of the T to T with topic, it is just new MQTT topic filter.
filter builder.
No, just filter. You might have to add a using statement. So it's just MQTT topic filter. Yeah, so it does. You add that one, yeah, and then
Packets.
instead of use an open bracket for like properties, not
There's
a
no.
not a parentheses, but a bracket.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yep. And it is
So we're just gonna
topic
new it up.
equals solar assistant.
That's interesting that they made them so different.
Right? It is. It's almost.
There's got to be a good
backwards.
reason for it, I imagine. Oh, there's a build at the end of that.
Yep, and that's a dot build too. All right.
So there's unsubscribe, unsubscribe, making sure I got all the subscribes to unsubscribes. All right. So we can subscribe and unsubscribe. Do we have a way to test this yet?
Nope.
Do we have enough
Almost.
here?
Yeah, almost. So now that we have a service class, we need to go put this in our dependency injection.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, so in your program, let's create a scoped dependency under builder. So it'll be builder.services add scoped. And we'll type it to that class. We don't need any parameters, but add scope and then add that MQTT UI service. Yep. And now we can go into our homepage and inject that service.
All right, so we're going to add a using statement, which I'm going to take out of there and put in imports.razor because I feel like we're going to be using this in other places.
Yeah. And while you're doing that, I am going to try to get you URL.
Yeah, we need to add settings.
Yeah, you need to add those two things to.
So are these things that you do or don't want to publish to GitHub?
So I'm going to create a. These are things you don't want to publish, generally speaking. So I would put it in app settings, development.
So if you don't want it to publish to GitHub, you could
Or
do,
secrets.
yeah, manage user secrets.
Yeah.
And then drop them in there. And then we've got 2 keys. I'm going to go, while you grab the URLs, I'm going to come over here and get our configuration keys. So we've got a key there. And we could get a little bit more advanced with this too.
Right. This is just the
yeah.
basic what we need to connect. Right.
As far as settings go, though, we can make these a little bit more reliable as well. I don't like magic strings. So we've
and the
got our
port
host and our
empty.
port.
Yep. So,
And, oh, we had some comments in chat, by the way. Hey, Fuel Snabble. Welcome to the show. And then we have a bot that I didn't get to kill yet.
yeah, you handle that. I will look for, I'm going to create a quick redirect for you to use.
And ban the bot. There we go. Sorry I didn't notice the chat right away. It was busy coding. Got nothing to offer. The Fuel Snabble, no flexible and convenient ways to get me viewers on Twitch. So I can buy a bot farm to watch my show for numbers. All right.
Actually,
So
you know something, we don't have enough time for me to wire up the DNS for this, which I should have honestly done before the episode. We have 5 minutes left. So yeah, let's continue and go into the code behind. We know the values we need are going to come from those variables. And when the service starts up, it should already be populated with what we need, right? Because of those secrets. We could change this so that when you get the service class, you have to pass in the values then. I just did it this way as a quick startup, right? Because constructor, when the dependency injection system instantiates an instance of that class for your view, it goes to your app settings to get those values at the time it's instantiated. So now in the view, we can go in and just like, what is a startup function for a page? Is it like onloaded, on appearing?
So we've got, yeah, thanks, Justin. So like Justin said, we've got on initialize, come on, override, on initialized, and we have initialized and initialized async. So it depends on what we're going to call. And I think all of our methods are async so far, right?
Yep.
So we'll probably use the on initialized async method. And we'll have our service, and then we're calling what? Are we subscribing in here? We've already subscribed in.
But we haven't set it up
We haven't
yet.
really actually called it, right?
Right. Subscribe and unsubscribe are just to start and stop the listening. We need to do one thing before we can subscribe and unsubscribe. And that was the first task we created, which is set up MQTT.
So we need to call setup first.
Yep. And remember the argument we put here is this delegate, is the event handler, pretty much. All right. So we need to create an event handler, which is a task with that. So it's a private async task, like between 13 and 14. Let's add a new line and create our event listener. Async task, and the task is of type MQTT application message received. You'll have to add a using statement. Received event args. And then E, and then that should be,
Doesn't
oh no,
like
I'm
it.
sorry. Close the
gonna-
bracket.
I'm gonna go get it from the
Yeah.
service because I didn't type it right or something, and I'm not gonna figure out what it was. There we go. Event args. And then if I hit control period, we'll get this using statement. And again, I think we're gonna probably use this again. Just stick it in there.
And instead of typing the task, it is you just name the task, and those are the arguments. So it'd be private async task got message, right? So the task isn't typed; it's an untyped task. You know what I mean? Like, see how between you have a typed task.
Yeah, I didn't name it.
So after task,
Oh yeah.
but before the typed. Right. So, but we want to get rid of that type. So you have a task of type application message received. We don't want that. We just want a plain task. So you take that type out of there entirely, and that is the type of the variable. So inside of got message, paste that in.
Inside of got message.
I mean, inside the constructor, like it's a variable that gets passed to that task. So on line 14.
Oh, an argument here.
Yeah, and then just do.
Whoops.
Oh,
I'm
did
gonna
you
have to
lose
go
it?
copy it again. God, that's the. I know naming things is hard, but that is one of the longest class names I've seen in a while.
Right.
As
And then
args.
E, yeah, args, yeah. And now we have our thing, and you can pass that. Oh, why is it giving us a green squiggly?
Because we haven't awaited anything yet.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we don't need to put anything in here right now, right? We just need to define this method. So you can leave it empty, and then got message is what we're passing to set up MQTT. Is there anything else it needs? Nope. And we await that. So it's await service set up MQTT. And now we're ready.
We need to return the base, and then this needs to be await. Oh, yeah, async. Thanks, Justin.
I do that all the time. Yeah, so basically any code we want to run when we get this message. So if you do e dot application message dot topic, this is where that data comes in. Right, so all that data comes in through here. The next episode we'll dig into how to parse out what we're getting for data, but this is basically how it works. But just because it's set up doesn't mean we're currently listening. This is an expensive thing to have a live socket. So we only connect to it using our subscribe async method, and we disconnect from it using unsubscribe async. So what you could do, if you want it to automatically work when this page loads, then on line 11, after line 11, you would put await service subscribe async. But typically you would want maybe a toggle button, right? So toggling on goes subscribe async, and toggling it off does unsubscribe. We can get into that
you could
next time.
Yeah, just for conversation's sake too, if you didn't want a manual way of doing that, you could also do implements disposable, and then you could create a dispose method.
Is there a navigated to and navigated from method for Razor pages?
You can do things on navigation, but there's some gotchas with it. So it's not
But
going to
yeah,
catch, like if I close the page,
mm,
there, even dispose can be a little tricky sometimes. It doesn't always run.
yeah, because you need to
The app
wait
can close
for,
before dispose finishes.
yeah, because the garbage collection is really in charge of disposing that object, right? Or the runtime.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's basically, this is the structure of it. And I think we achieved our goal today, right? We created this service class that can connect to a broker. And you connect to the broker using the IP address or the host and the port number.
Okay.
And then we can use this anywhere in the app that you want to listen to the services. You just inject the service and then you say, set it up. This is the event handler I want to run. Um, and that's basically it. And then every time we get about once a second, this got message will be triggered. Um, well, a batch of them will come in. So you'll, for about once a second, it'll get triggered about 5, 6, or 7 times. So 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, you know what I mean? So you get all the topics all at once. And that's when you can start populating charts, so you can have a gauge or something like that.
Probably have to trigger state has changed in here too, right?
That was a gotcha
Because
for me
these
as well.
aren't, so it's not waiting for like a typical interaction, like a button click or some other Blazor event. So since it's outside of the event handling system and the component lifecycle, we need to tell it there's something changing, or the UI just won't update, even though this is like grabbing all kinds of messages.
Yeah, Justin, this is where you helped me once when I was working on the experimental version, and like you said, the charts weren't updating. And Justin, what did you tell me to do? Was something like await invoke changed or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I remember.
Await invoke async state has changed. Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. If you end up, I mean, if it's just in this one place, that's probably fine to call it there. You could also set this up as a delegate as well.
It's
And
better in
kind of
batches because you're gonna
yeah.
realize that this is gonna get invoked a bunch of times in a short time frame. Right. So for every message that we're listening to, we get a bunch. It's like a little batch of, let's say, 10. Right. So it'll be 10 really quick, all 10. Do we want to call state has changed 10 times that quickly, or do we wait for that and then trigger it?
Yeah.
Once a second.
Yeah. There's some things we could do to kind of set up like a refresh window and throttle it.
Now, this
If
is
we
the
need
real
to.
world problems that I ran into with experimenting with it and Blazor, like working with Blazor in general in real time data. So I'm looking forward to what we built from here to make that work for the user in a way that doesn't break the app.
Yeah, there's a should render as well. So you could put logic in there to say like, I don't have a big enough queue to bother re-rendering. Just go ahead and accept messages in, and then have some kind of logic in here that says, okay, I've got enough of a payload now that it's worth re-rendering the UI. You can put, whatever custom logic you wanted in there to tell it when to render. So
Ooh,
that's a thing as well.
what triggers that though? State has changed.
So should render when the component is a re-render is called. There is a value, or if this returns false, then it will suppress the rendering. So see, this is a override
So in
bool.
that
It's going
case,
to So if I
True or
said
false.
return false here and hard coded this, the component will never render. So what
In that
you'd want to
case, what we can do is we
is
know how many messages we're supposed to get in each batch. So we can check the last count. Like, let's say we're going to have an observable collection here because it'll be bound to a chart. We can say, check the count. If the count is not 10 or higher from last time we did it, don't render. If it is 10 or higher, okay, go ahead and render.
Yeah, we might be able to force it to re-render 10 at a time that way.
Yeah.
I'll have to play with it and see.
All
So
right.
that's one option.
Fantastic.
All
Justin
right,
and I
guys.
do need to hop off shortly. And I think we're pretty much at a good state. Do we have any pending questions in the comments?
Nothing today. I'm going to go ahead and push this up
Hmm.
to my GitHub, just so we all have access to it. And then we'll
Oh,
work on
fuel,
it
yes,
again.
is an OpenSSH bug. But I've seen that it has not been proven that this OpenSSH bug was implementable against 64-bit boxes. But if you have a bunch of Raspberry Pis that are facing the internet for some reason, and they're 32-bit Raspberry Pis, you should update. There's a big SSH vulnerability right now. And of course, no one should have port 22 open to the internet. Public service message.
All right, guys, I'll let you go. This has been pushed up to GitHub, and we'll pick it up and run with it next week.
Cool.
Fantastic.